Tamara from Cali Services, and today we will be talking about employer branding. I think it's a fascinating topic. I think there are a lot of things to talk about. We just had a session about the candidate experience, we had a session about mobile, we talked with some guys about the social media. So I think it's all kind of ties together really well. So I would like to introduce our track leader, Craig Fisher.
Hi.
And maybe we make the round just to introduce ourselves and start the conversation.
Mervyn.
Okay, I'm Mervyn Dinnan, Content Community Social Engagement around recruitment and HR.
Hello, I'm Charu Malhotra. I've worked on employer branding and social media creation at Unilever.
I'm Craig Fisher. I'm the CEO of TalentNet, among many other things. I'm Fish Dogs on Twitter, and I teach companies how to use social media for sales and recruiting.
Hi, I'm Michael Hoskinson. I'm Client Development for AIA Worldwide, the recruitment communications and employer branding agency.
Hi, I'm Holly Fawcett. I am a digital marketing manager for Social Talent.
Great, so we're ready to go.
Yeah.
All right, so Mervyn,
Great,
to you first.
thank you.
And this is going to be a general discussion. We're just going to all pipe in, but I'm going to start with Mervyn. Mervyn, you've been in this business quite a while, and
Yes.
you're an expert at content. Yeah, I think you are. I
Yes,
think you're
I
quite
try.
good. Yeah. What do you see as the most compelling content that employers can use these days in order to sort of get across the message that this is our company's culture?
Content created by and around the people who work there, I think, is the most telling thing. Not a stage thing where it's hello, I work here and I've been asked to make this video to tell you how great we are. But I think very natural, authentic, warts and all kind of, whether it's by blog, whether it's video, whether it's Facebook, whatever it is, but to give people an insight into what it's like to work there, I suppose from the people who work there, as opposed to what marketing, HR or comms say it's like to work there.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and I think it's right on, and I completely agree with you. I think a lot of companies, and specifically a lot of employees within companies, are a little afraid to put themselves out there, and it's not necessarily, as Charu would probably agree, just that easy to flip the switch and say, let's all throw our warts and all out and be, public about our culture. So, do you think that there are, Charu, boundaries and barriers to sort of implementing a program like that?
So I think boundaries is probably is too strong a word, but I think first of all, recognising that everyone at True and everyone on this panel are practitioners and we live and breathe social resourcing and talent. And often what we think is really great content wouldn't necessarily be something that who's sitting in a company doesn't recognise this as being the type of content that should be shared. So I think the first thing that's really important for us when you're working in a company or working as a consultant is to coach and engage and make it very clear that that authentic content that someone's got on their in their inbox, or that they've created a white paper, or even filmed at an internal conference, is something that would be really valuable and seen externally would be really rich for candidates and consumers. Where the boundaries come in is having robust guidelines. That's not saying anything more than, I've got a very good friend at PepsiCo who would say, the guideline for social media should be don't be stupid. Don't share anything that you'd be embarrassed to see on the Daily Mail or the Guardian the next day. So I think those are the type of boundaries that we want to think about. But good content isn't necessarily something very flash. It could be just something that I read, and I'm an internal employee, that I think I would want to share with my community, internal or external.
Yeah, so sharing things that your audience would like to share with their audience. I mean, basically you're passing along good information, and it doesn't have to be pictures, it doesn't have to be videos, it could be just useful resources. And I think employers do a really better and better job of encouraging their employees to sort of get out there, the ones who get it. And then there are some other employers who still ban Facebook at the office. Right. So is, Michael, in your opinion, a good social media policy for sharing content and helping to build the employer brand as an employee is use common sense? Will that work for most companies?
I think a lot of it's to do with how well communicated internally that original employer brand message was. So if the employees understand that this is our EVP, this is what we stand for, this is what we're driving towards, they'll do a better job of being able to self-select the sorts of things that represent that, and then are going to do a good job of becoming content that brings that message out. I think too often an organisation will think up an EVP in the dark corner of some business, high-five themselves, and then not tell anybody about it, and therefore are unjustifiably disappointed when the content that's coming out from the mass population doesn't really
match up. Yep. So I think a lot of employees, and so I'm a firm believer that employer brands are made up of employee brands, right? You can go off into marketing and write your stuff and put it out on the website, and
it's not really working.
It's great, but it's not really working. So yeah, job candidates will actually now go look at the people within an organization. Who's going to be hiring me? Who am I going to be working for and working with? Who else is doing my job? What do they look like physically? I want to check them out. Do they look like people I want to work with? Right? And so,
in fact, we had a track earlier talking about social media and agencies, you were in it, I think, where somebody made the point that everyone was talking about hiring managers doing Google checks and searches on candidates, and actually it's the other way around. It's candidates coming for interview having done the Google search on people interviewing them.
That's right. And so one of the biggest problems we see is when candidates go to look at employees of a company, especially the manager that they're interviewing with, sometimes even the recruiter, is that there's not enough information there for the candidate to properly opt into that employer's brand or that person's brand. So Holly, you do a lot of great compelling content with video and lots of cool mediums. Do you find that most people are naturally good at putting themselves out there, or most people are not?
I don't think anybody is naturally good at putting themselves out there. Everybody takes a lot of practice, I think, to get more comfortable in front of cameras or even writing stuff down. Some people find it difficult to write, some people find it difficult to be in front of a camera. But then again, everybody has a mobile phone where they happily take photographs anyway. They mightn't be the be Instagrammers or have be able to do loads of special effects or whatever, but everybody's very different and everybody produces content in different ways. Whether an employer brand is really strong and everybody in the company buys into it because they actually live and breathe that culture. It's already an innate part of what they were before they even joined that company, and they just slot in really well. They very happily just take photographs of when I don't know, when Google put out a playground into their side passageway in their Google Docs office in Dublin, for example, and all the employees are like, this is cool, and they just take photographs and put up on their ordinary Facebook pages, which is not really what they're supposed to be doing. They should have put it on the Google Plus pages, but that's another story. But all of their friends were kind of like, oh, you guys have really cool stuff, you guys put a massive playground in. But versus when people are coming into a company and maybe they weren't that great in terms of the cultural fit, like take the likes of Zynga, for example, when they were letting go a lot of employees, unfortunately, and some of their employees went on to Reddit and just said, right, guys, ask whatever questions you want. I can't, specify any specific projects that I worked on, but I can answer any questions you want about what it's like to work here. And Zynga got absolutely slated for constantly having dogs in the office because they never actually got to leave the office. That kind of company culture didn't work for them particularly well. They weren't selected necessarily for cultural fit. They were a skills fit, obviously, but they just weren't great in terms of that way. So it can bite you in the ass as well when people naturally take to their own medium wherever they feel comfortable, whether it's a Reddit board or a Tumblr or their Facebook page or whatever. You can be promoted very well or be absolutely slated.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that I think this is a very important kind of angle to look at employer branding. So if someone comes to say we need to build an employer branding program, and let's build it, implement, because we need to increase the number of candidates who are coming, I don't know. But what you're always saying is actually it's about the culture in the company. So if you don't have a culture inside of the company, it will be really, really difficult to create a program. Okay, you can spend hours and money.
You'll have a culture, it's do you understand the culture inside your company?
Or you have a culture, but the way how you present it totally different, right? So you have this glossy, yes, I'm working in marketing, I know how sometimes people are doing that, right? So you take one thing, then you're just rewriting completely and putting completely different picture out there, right? So then what happens is where candidates, okay, they're going, they might believe it, right? So they've seen the content that says this is a great company to work, la la la. And then the person comes to the interview, has some thoughts, is it really like that or not? But let's imagine that he takes the decision and he joins the company. And then I guarantee 30 days and the person decides to leave. Because what he thought it is and what is the reality is totally different.
Yeah, it doesn't match the promise.
Correct.
And here's the thing, and we talk about authentic employer brands a lot, and Mervyn actually is really smart about this, right? Warts and all, here's who we are, right? And that's pretty, you know, transparent, and you sort of want that. I think you can find it if you're smart as a job candidate already. Just go to LinkedIn and look at the people who are who are working there. And the thing I think we find most is you go look at a company and it looks more like an empty shell, right? It looks more like a bunch of people maybe looking for jobs or doing their own thing, not a whole bunch of engaged employees prattling on about how great the company is. Now, Google has this, and a lot of companies are starting to think this way. Wow, we need to be building fans both internally and externally. So you leave this company, but man, you liked it here, right? And that's what we want forever and ever. So Mervyn, how do we do that?
Oh God. Well, first, I mean, you've got to understand what it is, because it's companies, particularly once you're over probably 15, 20 people in size, are a collection of individuals. I mean, a prime example, I mean, in the recruitment industry, say, nearly every recruitment agency calls itself a high-performance culture and targeted, driven. Within that, you'll have probably half a dozen managers. Probably 4 of them will be, that's what they're like, and the other 2 won't be. So depending on what team you're in, you'll have a very different experience of working there. And yet there's one, you know, we're high performance with this, but some people are working there thinking we're not. Other people are thinking, well, it's all right for them. They miss target and nobody says anything. Me, you know, I'm under threat. So I think it's understanding that it won't be the same thing, hence the warts and all. And I think on the one hand, you've got to let people be comfortable. Something that I did at JobSite was called a social lunch, which is where we got a group of people who were interested in knowing more about social tools and how they can use them, not how they can use them for the company, but just initially it was how they can use them for themselves. And we got them together once a month over some pizza. Don't do it over sandwiches. No one comes to do it if all they're being offered sandwiches. Offer them pizza once a month, they all come. And it was kind of just learning how to use Twitter, how to use Tumblr, kind of maybe we can build something internally, people sharing recipes on it or something. And it's amazing how people really want to show off. We did a Red Nose Day thing and everybody wanted to show off their pictures. So I think it's just making people feel that they can show what it's like to be there, and that what will reflect is the fact it reflects what the company is like overall, not just one part of it.
So I see this a lot in organizations. You talk to the people in the company and their sort of employee experience is just a direct reflection of who they work for, who their manager is, and what their team looks like. And that's really their impression of the organization. And so at some point, does it have to be a training thing at the management level? Do we say, this is who we are, this is what we want to translate to our employees, this is the spirit, right, that should be given to everyone in the company? And is that effective?
But I think we're acting as if an employer brand is something that you just create and you give it to people. Even if you don't have something that's articulated as an employer brand, it exists because the fact that you don't have a cohesive story that people feel anchored to and values, that's what your employer brand is.
That's a brand.
And that's what you're like as an organisation. So to your point, that's around the employee value proposition. It's got to be authentic. There's no point selling a Ferrari if you're really something else internally. But I think it comes back to what is your company genuinely like, and not presenting that in a false way to employees, because they do know what reality looks like. That candidates go to Glassdoor.com, employees live it day and night, and we all know that employees are just as likely to leave a good manager as move internally. They would rather actually work for a company that approaches your values. So I think to your point, I don't think a diktat saying this is what our employer brand is, this is how you need to translate. Your employer brand is how the manager, the senior manager, the vice president manages the staff, how he or she engages with them, does he treat them with integrity? That's your employer brand. It's not just the fabulous pictures.
We use the word promise, and so a really good employer brand is the science behind where are we now. And if you create an employer brand that's where are we now, it'll be brilliant because it's accurate, but it'll fail because it's not taking you anywhere. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got this incredibly aspirational business where some tiny little company says, by next year we'll be Google. Okay, you won't be, and everything will be amazing, and we'll be the super high performance driven culture, and this is where we'd like to be, and you can do that, and externally everyone will say, wow, that's amazing, and you'll be incredibly successful, but then they'll join exactly as you said, and it'll fail. So the balancing act is, it's somewhere in the middle of there, based on the sound, we are actually here, this is who we are as a business, we're not lying about it, and we want to get over here, we're heading in this direction. And then if you can get your hands on that science and turn that into a brand, then what you should be doing with that is not just turning it into a brochure and leaving it on the side for some people to read in a canteen. It's then that's what drives across the business. So you talk about those 4 recruiters who are the high performance and the 2 that aren't. Well, if we've decided that where we are now is a bit hit and miss, but the aspiration is that we're all going to be super high performance, then the brand is not just what colour the website is, it's then what you lace through the business and say, we are now going to be a high performance culture. As a result, your performance and development reviews will be changed, your job description might get changed, your bonus structure might get changed, and we really do thread this throughout the business, which is a lot more challenging than painting a brochure green. But that's what this is, and this is why we use the word promise. So when you join this company, we are promising that it will be like this, not that you've read a nice brochure and it's somewhere in there.
And the promise that you give and share with an intern compared to the vice president who's a recent hire and been headhunted, compared to an employee who's been engaged because he's moving to a different country, has to have a different lens to it. And I think that employee value proposition, that employer branding, has to have different ladders. Our employee value proposition has to work in Indonesia as well as India as well as China. And to articulate the same message to every single one would be ridiculous. It's got to have the same anchor, but messaged slightly differently.
But does everyone need to know what the goal is? There's a common goal. We're here, we want to be here, and this is why things are changing, because we want to be here, and everybody's got to be in on that.
I think the internal communication it's a key. It's playing the key role, because you need to explain to everyone who will be bringing this message outside, and people should be engaged, right? They need to believe what they're saying, otherwise they won't. Another thing that I've been thinking that there is employer branding and there is a personal branding, right? So if we're talking about the big companies like Google, people want to join the company because they know the name, right? But let's think about the smaller companies who don't have the name. So all the researchers show the people joining, not the companies, but sometimes the leaders, the managers, right? So, and here this personal branding really comes to play, because if I'm there and I'm saying what is my passion, what I'm doing, and I would like you guys to join me because we will be doing this together. So I think it's very important also to have a key people in the company who will be, those advocates outside and bring that message to the market.
So somebody's got to say it. Somebody's got to communicate it, and somebody's got to have that vision at the top to say to these people here, this is our company. And it's not because we just thought it up in marketing, it's because this is our goal here. All right, so I think we've solved employer branding just now. That was really...
And you hire, the thing is you hire to it. I mean, it begins at the hiring process. If you understand your culture, you understand what binds people together, then that's got to be part of the recruitment process. Because once you put people in who don't share those values, it will automatically change.
Right, and you spend a lot of money because think about their metrics. What are the metrics behind employer branding? So we are, putting all these resources and time and money to build it. So why we're doing this? What is the real outcome that we're expecting? We're doing this to get the best talent from the market. So I think it's not just creating, it is about the communication. It is about their, bringing the engagement, but it's also tracking what it really gives you back.
What happens?
What happens every month. Like, are you going to the right direction? Because maybe there are 2 or 3 guys who are very excited about something. They're saying, this is what we need to do, but it's really not working. And those are the decision makers, for example. So this is when, you know, you really need to see the reality, and you need to see if it's working or if it's not working.
And that's why your employer brand has to be authentic, because it's just
Right.
not about attraction, it's about retaining.
Right.
And if those employees don't feel, you're going back to messaging this, someone's got to message your employer brand. It can't just be that one figurehead, you know, it can't just be Richard Branson who lives the Virgin brand,
Right.
because ultimately once he leaves or retires, or not leaves, retires, it shouldn't fall apart. It should be everyone articulating that. So I think it's got to be believed, because I'm not going to say where I work is fabulous because you can tell me to.
Right.
I've got to believe it. So that's how you retain me.
Well, this is the super challenging thing that's happened from an employer brand perspective, is this thing called social media. Whereas before, what we did is we sat in the corner and we said, okay, we want to be green, and we'll put the logo in the top right hand corner.
Now we're green.
And
Yeah,
now we're green. Done. And you know, what should we be about? Sustainability. Awesome. Let's be about sustainability and open door policies. Great. That's what it is. Write that up. Cool. Print that brochure. Well, what's
Print the
happened?
brochure.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
We give back to our charity.
well, what's happened now is we've gone out onto these social channels, and people are able to really see if that's the case. And so what we've been doing for many, many years is like we were saying a minute ago, yeah, you can do the glossy science level, but then you actually need to deliver that internally.
Yeah.
And you could probably have got away with that, other than the fact that a few people would have left when they've been hired onto some promise that wasn't actually what they were going to get. Whereas now, you can put yourself out there and say, we're this, and someone can say, brilliant, I'll just go on your Facebook page and see that, oh no, everyone hates you and is still working there till midnight.
Well, if you go to Glassdoor, they're saying about the hygiene factors,
that's
or
right.
you have no fruit in your restaurant. It's the
Yeah.
small things that people complain
make a
about, as
difference,
well as
yeah.
you know, the big pensions and so on.
Well, so
Sometimes the message can get very, very lost as well. Like if you've got a business, for example, like a retail business, where you've got like thousands of stores, you know, a massive corporation, thousands of stores, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees. Every single store is a microcosm of an employer brand in itself, because they're led by a figurehead, and underneath them there's more figureheads, and then they're leading the people on the front line. And then you've got customers who are coming in all the time, and you know, so everybody's kind of interacting with each other. They know there is a general overall message there somewhere, and I might be conforming to it, but because everybody's different and there is no unfortunate way of saying, right, carte blanche, our entire brand is about this. But you know, I think you should really embrace the fact that everything is slightly different. But like, I'm really hammering it home. Like I'm thinking of like Ritz-Carlton, who's kind of their main message for employees is it's ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, and that is it. That's what they do every single day. Every single day they've got one of 20 talking points, and they go over them every single day. So they talking about one day. On Tuesday they're talking about two, and it's go over every single day. So everybody really discusses what's going on and all that kind of stuff, and they've really hammered home in terms of employer branding. It's why they've got one of the largest retention rates in terms of service staff, and great customer service at the end of the day as well. But when you look at maybe a retail business, I don't know, I won't name names of any retail business actually, because I'm going to get myself in trouble.
For legal reasons.
For legal reasons. I used to work in retail, that's why. But it's really, really hard to kind of spread the authentic message when your actual microcosm culture in your own little town, you know, you're reflecting what your customers actually want, not necessarily what head office possibly in the United States really want, because what do they know what your little store in Birmingham wants? Do you know? So it's very difficult to really have continuity of message sometimes.
Especially when you've got more companies outsourcing their activity in social and employer brand and so on, and that's where the disconnect comes, where people like ourselves will sit there and say authentic is the word we've all mentioned more than David Cameron, yet if you've outsourced it to a third-party agency,
You've lost
you've lost
got to be
their
your own voice,
messaging.
got to be
You
your
know,
are you
that-
saying that we can't just build props and put up air hockey tables and playgrounds and give people places to take pictures, and that's not employer branding? That's not
And
authentic?
then our offices are actually on a Slough trading estate.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, and I think companies do this. I think the props, if you will, right, are not the employer brand, but you do need those props. You need places where people can gather and
They're
take
not the
pictures,
brand,
and
but they're part of the experience.
they're part of the experience,
Yeah.
and they're part of the presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you have to have these things. You have to have a pretty cover, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, actually, funnily enough, Google find that they have this amazing employer brand, right? They're the largest search engine in the world. Their mission statement is to organize the world's information, and everybody who works in that business kind of knows this already. And everybody knows about the free lunch and the beer on Fridays and the foosball tables and the sleep pods. They all know about this. but that actually hinders their application process. People were like, Jesus, I could never work there. I don't think I'm smart enough to work in there. And so they actually self-select themselves out of a job working there when really that could actually be great.
But Google likes this. And they will put people through 17 interviews.
I know, in one day as well.
Yes.
Bless them.
It's insane. And
but also Google are an aspirational brand.
Yeah, hugely.
And if you go back, I don't know, last 20 years or so, I mean, aspirational brands over the year, I mean, now it's people like Google, it's people like eBay, it's people like YouTube, that's Google. You know what I mean? Facebook.
Facebook, yeah.
Whereas Amazon. Whereas years ago it was people like Marks and Spencer, British Airways,
Right.
Virgin have always been an aspirational brand.
There's still really huge aspirational brands in the UK. I mean, if you look at the LinkedIn employer branding survey that they did, retail businesses were huge up in there, which was terrific. Tesco
They really
was
were.
in there,
They were
Marks
very
and
high.
Spencer's was in there, Arcadia was in there.
They
You
were-
know,
they were
people
very
really
high.
want to work for those businesses because they shop in them every day and they go there and they know that they're community and they know the people who are behind the tills and they speak with them and they get on with them really well. So they, I want to work there because I enjoy it. You know?
But it's not just about the Fortune 100 or 500 or the FTSE 100. It's even if you're a smaller enterprise, in London, or wherever, and you only have 50 employees, I think someone mentioned. Your employer brand could be the fact that the managing director comes down every 2 weeks and takes, orders pizza in, or something as small as, and I've seen it tagged on Glassdoor.com. The receptionist kind of, it doesn't keep you waiting in terms of when you come in for meetings and so on, knows the person. And I'm trying to articulate the fact that you don't need to be a big player to have an employer brand. You're going to have one anyway, and it's distilling those sort of hygiene factors that people find
The
attractive.
same with social talent. I mean,
Isn't it?
we're a business of 8 people, and last Christmas we all went to Barcelona for at the night because we're so small that we can actually afford to do that.
Which is great.
If we were 48 people, we would never have been able to go to
So
Barcelona.
who do you think owns their employer branding? Let's put it differently.
so
who owns-
within the company?
Right.
Yeah, so this is a constant struggle for people like me who go in and teach this stuff at companies, right? Who's your point of contact? Where does it start? And most employers don't know that. Most employers don't realize or have any idea who owns employer branding within their company. Is it human resources? Is it marketing? Is it someone that sort of
In between?
vacillates in between, this invisible ghost person? We don't really generally know the answer to that. And the truth
Or
is,
do we create a role for that person?
do we create a role? It sits usually in 2 places, right? It has to sit somewhere in HR because somebody's got to write that creed about this is who we are as a company. And that's generally a marketing person talking to a manager given to human resources and legal, and then it sits in human resources. But then somebody also has to take pictures of the toys.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the marketing people.
That's the marketing people, and I think if that sits in HR, it won't work.
That's right.
If it sits just in marketing, it won't work. If it sits just on the general manager table, it really won't work as well. I think it should be somewhere in between. And I was thinking that the employer branding can be a competitive advantage of the company. Think from this perspective, right? If you're producing something, or you're, or it's a service that you're providing, if you have a strong culture, if you have a strong employer brand, people want to work for you. Before, the competitive advantage were, how big is the company, how much money do you have. Right now, it's all about the talent. If you have the right people to do the right thing, and if you don't have, you won't be successful. So, coming back to your question, I think it should be everyone in the company, or the decision makers. Let's put it this way: the decision makers should understand this is the critical subject, and it should be in the business plan for the whole year what we're doing for the employer branding, because it influences our service. That means they influence, the customers. So
I think it's a funny thing when you ask employees of a company, even high-level employees, VPs, presidents, and we did this. So one of my teams does the profile optimization at the LinkedIn Talent Connect conference every year for the attendees. And we ask people, VPs, the VP of, I'm not going to say which part of the organization, of a major part of an organization of a company that rhymes with Microsoft. I ask him, and as part of the process, we're asking them to flush out what's unique about your organization, what's your employer brand proposition that other people would be interested in. And to a man, they all said about 1 in 7 things. They said, well, we've got a really structured and secure environment. We've been around a long time, and people know that we're not going anywhere, or we've got a really cool startup culture, or a great work-life balance, or awesome family values. And they all said the same things. There was not, I mean, literally about 7 different things we cataloged. And there wasn't anything unique.
Yeah.
And so when I said to some of these people, don't you have one thing that nobody else has? And they're like, trying to think. But it's their people, right? And so as we wrap this up, I'd like a thought from each of you. How do we get a company to transmit that message to their people, to be able to talk about work better? Mervyn, let's start with you.
Oh, you want me to go first? I worked for a company once, it was about 150 people strong. I know it was one thought, sorry it's a story. And they had core values, and they decided that they needed to be upgraded. And they formed a, I suppose, I wouldn't say committee, but from all around the company, so support, frontline, sales, HR, about 8 or 9 people got together to define what the guiding principles were of the business. So in what they did, in what they stood, not what they stood for in business, but just, you know, ethic, honesty, authenticity, openness, and all that kind of stuff. And they did. It was the employees that came up, these are the guiding principles we believe here. And they used that as the kind of, if you like, the blueprint when they interviewed. How does the person we're interviewing match up to those principles? So I think it's to get the employees involved in defining what it is to them to work there.
Like it. Charu?
So in terms of an employer brand, how do we get companies to take it seriously? I think is your
Well, how do we get them to translate this to their employees, to get them talking about work better?
So I think first of all, they're the people at the head of the business realising that those employees are doing it anyway, whether they're doing it on the pub or whether they're doing it on their own Facebook pages or Twitter, is that conversation's happening. It's always happened. It's happened for the last since the beginning of work. People have always talked about, you know, good and bad. But I think, you know, for me, it's around those people at the top of the company realising that it's all about people having and being connected. You know, when you're a connected consumer, we're a connected candidate, we're in a connected generational complete shift now that if I want to complain about British Airways, I can buy a tweet and I can do it and it can go viral. You know, that kind of power and that time, you know, that type of being connected is something that's there. Whether companies embrace it and work it and do workshops and focus groups for employees to create a much better employee value proposition and then translate that and then share it is great. If they don't, they'll get left behind because it's going to be happening, that magic's going to happen anyway, but it won't be something they want to hear.
Don't look now, your culture is showing. Michael?
I think it's the kind of which comes first, chicken or the egg. I think there's one way of doing an employer brand, which is to decide you're this, create your employer brand, and then tell everybody that that's what you are, right, and that that's what we're going to be moving forward. The other way, which is probably the Google example, which is they are something, have been something, and are doing something, and then are communicating it, rather than they weren't something, they aren't something, and Google has told them to communicate it like that. So probably be it.
Don't just write it.
Yeah.
I like it. Colin?
Pretty much based on your 2 examples as well, just to kind of empower your employees, just to give them the empowerment to say it's perfectly fine to go on Twitter or Facebook and say stuff about work, just please don't give away any confidential information about work, and everything else is fine.
Use common sense.
Yeah, exactly. Just use common sense. And then once employers are kind of on the mindset that, you know, as you're saying, that these conversations are happening anyway, just embrace it all, it'll all be fine. Don't ban Facebook from work. You know, they have it on their phones, for God's sake.
Actually, just one thing, it will all be fine, but make sure you have a very good crisis management system.
Right.
Yeah. I think you need to be honest. First of all, you need to be honest with your employees. Don't make them to tell the story. Don't make them, this is the story you need to tell. And you need to trust them. You can't control. You can't, in this era that we're living in, social media era, you can't control the message. So I think that first of all, you need to be honest and say, okay guys, this is, let's do it together. This is what we're thinking, this is where we're going. And then trust them to say that message, to give that across. Otherwise, it won't work.
All right, so that's about all the time we have for this awesome roundtable on employer branding. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, truLondon, for having us here today. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.